Hey guys, thanks for joining us for the July newsletter. Wow, I can't even believe it's already July. Well, I hope everyone had a great July 4th. I know I did. There's nothing like sitting by the pool with friends and family eating great barbecue. This month, we are talking about trucking simulators, the testing of new truckers on FMCSA rules and regulations, hearing loss and OSHA recordables, and positive drug tests and how it affects safety. All right, roll that beautiful bean footage. Technology, technology, technology. Some of the advancements in technology being made these days are amazing, and we sometimes wonder how we ever lived without them. I'm not sure if this is an across-the-board feeling about automated driving systems or ADSs, but I'm sure it will be someday. Right now, most ADS-equipped vehicles on US roads are in passenger vehicles, but ADSs have also started to be implemented in CMVs as well, but they need to collect a lot more data. The most recent study by the FMCSA is to analyze safety impacts between humans and automated driving systems in Level 4 automated driving system equipped CMVs. Just to clarify what that means, Level 4 ADS equipped CMVs are capable of all functions and controls necessary for driving without human monitoring in limited conditions. The human driver will not be asked to take control of the vehicle. Currently, there are at least 4 use cases where a human may team with an ADS-equipped CMV, which include 1. In-vehicle driver teams with an ADS-equipped CMV, 2. In-vehicle driver teams with a following ADS-equipped CMV, 3. In-vehicle driver teams with a remote human to monitor and control an ADS-equipped CMV, and 4. A remote monitor or operator that teams with an ADS-equipped CMV. Each of the teaming use cases I just mentioned offers different human benefits and challenges, and it's not clear how each teaming use case will affect safety, productivity, and efficiency. So, this study is providing data to assess the safety benefits and disbenefits on human ADS teaming scenarios, such as remote operator use, workload, fatigue, alertness, and distraction while actively monitoring or controlling an ADS-equipped truck, driver re-engagement after ADS or remote operator control, and fleet acceptance and future integration possibilities. The study includes data collection from a series of questionnaires and a driving simulator-focused experiment. Survey data will be used in 2 ways. 1, in the assessment of driving performance data as covariates in the model, controlling for certain demographic variables like age, gender, and experience, and 2, to answer research questions on the human factors and the relationship between the safety benefits of each of the 4 human ADS team driving applications. The FMCSA expects 80 participants for the driving simulator study, which will consist of 1 study session for up to 17 hours, and the questionnaire data will be collected prior to, during, and after the simulator study. As always, the FMCSA expects your comments on this notice, which you must submit by August 7th of 2023. If you're interested or have questions, just fill out the form below or give CNS a call at 888-260-9448 and one of our DOT compliance specialists will help you out. I am sure you have heard of this by now, or at least you have dealt with the road closures, detours, and traffic, but several weeks ago a fuel tanker hauling gasoline wrecked on I-95, causing a portion of the bridge to collapse and unfortunately killing the driver. PennDOT has a plan for a permanent fix, but they've already finished temporary repairs and reopened the roadway, which is one of the busiest interstates in the city. Luke has a more detailed article and video on the subject, which you can check out in the top right of your screen. As a new trucking company, you should already know that within 12 months of starting operations, you will be subject to a new entrant safety audit. All new carriers are placed in the new entrant safety program to receive educational and technical assistance where needed. This is done by gathering safety data about your company and assessing your safety performance. The FMCSA is looking into taking that one step further by adding a proficiency test on the FMCSA rules and regulations as part of their revised new entrant safety assurance process, which was released in 2008. We have a more detailed article and video on this topic, which you can check out by clicking the link in the top right of your screen. And if you have any questions, just fill out the form below. On May 12, 2023, Iowa's Governor Kim Reynolds signed legislation that will limit payouts in lawsuits following a CMV accident, which are referred to as nuclear verdicts. ATRI defined nuclear verdicts as a case where more than $10 million is paid out to a victim of a trucking accident. When a truck driver is found to be at fault, truckers or a trucking company's insurance has to cover that, which you can assume can be crippling to a trucking company. Representative Bill Gustav said, "Iowa ranks as one of the top states to do business, and we are just trying to keep it that way by avoiding some of these nuclear verdicts that we've seen in a lot of other states." So you're probably thinking, this is good news, right? Well, of course it is. It's always a good thing when your bill is cut in half, especially when the accident isn't even the driver's fault. Well, this new law is capping non-economic damages at $5 million per plaintiff for pain and suffering. This applies to lawsuits brought against trucking companies where the CMV driver is found to be the cause of the accident. Now remember, this is only in Iowa, but hopefully other states will follow suit. If you have questions at this point, just fill out the form below, and a DOT compliance specialist will get back to you within 24 hours. There are some exceptions, and this cap can be waived under special circumstances, which includes accidents where the driver is under the influence of drugs and alcohol, refuses to submit to chemical testing, was also committing a felony, was involved in the manufacturing or distributing of controlled substances, did not have a proper commercial driver's license, was driving a vehicle involved in human trafficking, was driving recklessly, was using a mobile phone, computer, tablet, or other device while driving, or was speeding, going 15 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. In addition, a trucking company cannot be sued for negligence in hiring a truck driver who is involved in a crash, but the carrier can be sued for direct negligence in supervising, training, or trusting an employee. Now, why is this tort reform so important? Well, first of all, this is the third state that has recently passed or discussed passing some type of tort reform. Only 47 more to go. Either way, this is helping bring some stability to the insurance market for trucking companies, with the idea being that imposing these limits will bring down the insurance rates, since the total cost of claims and litigation can ultimately be reduced over time. As a carrier, you should strive to stay DOT compliant in an effort to protect drivers and your company. Litigators will look for unsafe driver patterns by inspecting the crash information and driver documents like driver qualification files, training records, pre- and post-trip inspection reports, daily activity logs, and post-collision alcohol and drug testing results. If all these documents are managed well, whether it be by the company itself or an external compliance company like CNS, unsafe driver trends, violations, and fines are much less likely. If you have questions about driver hiring, training, and driver qualification file management, or just staying compliant in general, you can fill out the form below or give CNS a call at 888-260-9448, and one of our DOT compliance specialists will help you out. The FMCSA has just announced their final guidance on the definitions of a broker and a bona fide agent. The guidance also included the role and activities of entities referred to as dispatch services, and the level of financial penalties for unauthorized brokerage services provided by such entities. It will look at 6 main areas, which include the definition of broker, the definition of a bona fide agent, the role of dispatch services in the transportation industry, how to determine whether a dispatch service is acting as a broker or as a bona fide agent, services dispatchers may provide without broker authority, and services that require dispatchers to obtain broker authority. So what does the final guidance say? Whoa, slow down there. We'll get to that. First, let's look at what the guidance doesn't say. The last few years have seen a big issue regarding accusations of fraud, supply chain abuse, theft of cargo, double brokering, and misappropriation of funds occurring in the industry. Double brokering is a big issue in the industry and occurs when a carrier accepts a load and then rebrokers it to another motor carrier. This is not a legal practice. In cases of double brokering, it is very likely the motor carrier that rebrokers the load is not authorized or in compliance with the FMCSA. This has become a big issue in the marketplace. When considering double brokering, a good rule of thumb to follow is if the rate seems too good to be true, then it's too good to be true. For example, if you know the market and see a load 75% over fair market rate, the load is likely double or even triple brokered. So you may pick up the load thinking, I'm about to make big bank. But in actuality, you will probably end up getting ghosted after delivering that load and never get paid at all. Many commenters on the guidance were concerned with double brokering, in which some entities act as brokers without proper authority. In response, the FMCSA said that double brokering is not a term defined by statute or regulation, and they have avoided creating unintended consequences in issuing its understanding of its regulations and related matters. The final guidance says, while the guidance may be relevant to stakeholder compliance with FMCSA's regulations, any changes to FMCSA's regulations and consequently to a stakeholder's compliance responsibilities would need to be made through a rulemaking proceeding. That long-winded answer to many commenters' concerns basically means that they will not be addressing that issue right now, so I'm sure it will be years before we see anything change on that topic. Now, what is the difference between a broker and a bona fide agent? Well, to keep it simple, a broker connects the people who have freight to move with the people who move it, while a bona fide agent works similarly, but usually is an individual or entity that solicits business for a motor carrier. If you would like to know more about what brokers and bona fide agents actually do, we have a detailed video that you can watch in the top right of your screen or a detailed article in the description below. But if you have any questions at this point or need more clarification, just fill out the form below and a DOT compliance specialist will get back to you within 24 hours. To better understand the regulatory definition, we should mention that there is no statutory or regulatory definition of a dispatch service. But they do have certain common features, including working exclusively for motor carriers and not for shippers. They source loads for motor carriers, and they also perform additional services for motor carriers unrelated to sourcing shipments. Let's dive deeper into dispatch services. Dispatch services may be classified as either brokers or bona fide agents, depending on the nature and scope of their activities. This requires an analysis of whether the activities meet the criteria set out in the statutory and regulatory definitions of a broker or bona fide agent. While no single factor will determine the business relationship between a dispatch service and a motor carrier, more control of the dispatcher by the motor carrier means dispatchers are less likely to source and allocate loads at their own discretion, which would ultimately require a broker authority. Next, a dispatch service that meets the following criteria would generally be considered a bona fide agent and would not require broker authority. The following list is a good reference for when broker authorities are not required. However, it is not exclusive, and a dispatch service does not necessarily have to meet every listed factor. Also, these are being summarized, so please go check out the article to get more detailed descriptions on them. 1. The dispatch service has a written legal contractual relationship with a motor carrier. 2. The dispatch service goes through a broker to arrange transport and doesn't solicit shippers for freight. 3. The dispatch service does not provide billing or accept compensation from the broker, third-party logistics companies, or factoring companies, but instead receives compensation from the motor carrier based on predetermined contracts. 4. The dispatch service is not an intermediary or involved in the financial transactions between a broker and motor carrier. 5. The dispatch service is an IRS 1099 recipient from the motor carrier or a W-2 employee of the motor carrier. 6. The dispatch service discloses that they are a dispatch service operating under an agreement with a specific motor carrier. 7. The dispatch service does not arrange for the load to be moved by another motor carrier. And 8. A dispatch service does not provide their services for a motor carrier unless that motor carrier specifically appointed the dispatch service as their agent in accordance with the requirements. Okay, on this next list is not exclusive as well, and a dispatch service does not necessarily have to meet every listed factor, but it is also a good reference for when broker authorities are required. 1, the dispatch service negotiates any shipment of freight directly with the shipper. 2, the dispatch service takes compensation for a load from the broker or factoring company or is involved in any part of the monetary transaction. 3, the dispatch service arranges for a shipment of freight for a motor carrier and there's no written contract with that motor carrier. 4, the dispatch service accepts a shipment without a truck or carrier and then attempts to find a truck or carrier to move the shipment. 5, the dispatch service engages in allocation of traffic by accepting a shipment that could be transported by more than one carrier it has agreements with. 6, the dispatch service is a named party on the shipping contract. And 7, the dispatch service is soliciting to the open market of carriers for the purpose of transporting a freight shipment. So, obviously there's a lot to unpack when discussing this topic, but we covered the basics. For a more in-depth look, please check out the full article. Links are in the description, or you can fill out the form below to get your questions answered right now. Also, you can get a complete broker insurance quote today from our commercial truck insurance specialist. You can call us at 1-800-724-5523, email us at info@cnsinsures.com, or you can just fill out the form below. OSHA has recently released their 2022 injury and illness data that was submitted by more than 300,000 employers nationwide. 3,700 companies reported almost 11,000 hearing injuries, which was close to 10% higher than in 2021. You might be thinking, well, it's only 10%, but first you should understand that the number should be going the opposite direction. And second, we are talking about permanent damage to people's hearing, which can be avoided by implementing strict safety policies. Several industries were impacted and include manufacturing, marine, and slaughtering, which are associated with companies that handle aircraft, motor vehicles, construction, shipyards, shipbuilding, cargo handling, poultry, beef, and more. Basically, any company that has a big factory with big machines making a lot of loud noises. Again, we are only talking about hearing injuries for these industries. Now, states with 10+ hearing loss injuries last year were Washington with 14, Michigan with 12, Pennsylvania with 11, and California with 11 as well. It's easy to see those numbers and blow them off, but that's 48 people that lost their hearing, and as far as I'm concerned, it's 48 too many. Just so you know, if you have any questions, you can just fill out the form below or call us at 1-800-551-9816 and one of our occupational healthcare specialists will be happy to help you. A worker's hearing can be damaged in several ways, one of which is a one-time exposure to a sudden powerful noise, such as an explosion. Explosions that are beyond human comprehension can damage a person's eardrums instantly. Now, I'm sure you are thinking, I'm in the clear, my employees don't work with explosives. Well, not quite. Are your employees around constant loud noises throughout their entire shift, like nail guns, jackhammers, or loud machines? If so, this can also cause damage. It just takes longer. The issues could start with tinnitus or ringing in the ear, which can go away in less than a day. But employees who continue working under the same conditions without the proper protection and are exposed to those constant loud noises can ultimately suffer from permanent damage to the little ear drummer boy in your ear. And once permanently damaged, no amount of surgery or hearing aids can help your little drummer boy. Once his arms are tired out, he is done for. You gotta take care of that little guy. So by now, I'm sure you are wondering, how do I know if my facility or tools are too noisy? Well, there are safety and health inspectors just for that reason. They will come to your facility and measure the noise levels using a fancy sound gizmo with a not so fancy name, a sound level meter. Side note, if it was me, I would have called it something cool like Save the Drummer Boy-O-meter or something like that. Anyways, noise surveys can and should be done on loud sites, and all equipment considered too loud can be labeled. OSHA also has devices that will measure the average noise exposure over a working day. A quick trick to gauge it yourself is if you need to raise your voice to talk to someone 3 feet away, then it might be too loud or over 85 decibels. and you and your employees might need some ear protection. Now I hear you asking, well, what can be done if I'm yelling at my employees while they're standing right next to me? Well, let's start with lowering our voices. We don't want them to think that they're in trouble, do we? Seriously though, the number one thing to do, and probably the simplest thing to do on loud work sites, is to wear ear protection. This is the best way to reduce exposure to loud noises. Alternatively, you can take the reduce it, move it, block it approach. To reduce it, use the quietest equipment available. If you don't need a massive generator for a job, use a smaller, quieter generator. To move it, follow the OSHA standards by using extension cords, additional welding leads, and air hoses to increase your distance from the noisy object. The further away it is, the lower the noise levels and less damaging the noise can be. To block it, if you can build temporary barriers between workers and whatever is generating the noise, using things like plywood or other on-site materials to block or absorb the noise, that would be very beneficial. If you have any questions or concerns, just fill out the form below and we'll be happy to help. What do you see here? If you see a big pile of drugs, then you may have a problem and you should probably get some help. Give us a call or just fill out the form below. Now, what you should see is a lot of numbers from the CDL Clearinghouse drug testing data that may or may not point to less truckers on the road. Within the last decade, when comparing Q1 of 2022 and 2023, the CDL Clearinghouse has removed 9.2% more drivers in 2023 for positive marijuana drug tests. So what's causing this and where? Well, first of all, you might be surprised to hear that the numbers haven't skyrocketed in states that have legalized marijuana, but are actually worse in states like Texas, where marijuana is illegal on all levels, and Florida, the worst state for drug and alcohol violations per driver, where recreational marijuana is not legal. As far as we can tell, there are three main reasons why there have been an increase in drug testing violations. One, the rise of medical and recreational marijuana legalization. Two, there's driver confusion between CBD and THC with the lack of regulation in the CBD industry. And three, a wider use of other drug testing methods. As far as how it affects safety, it's a bit of a sticky situation. It's hard to say if the roads are safer or if we took away too many good drivers for the wrong reasons. In theory, the 200,000 people that tested positive could have gotten behind the wheel and had an accident if they were under the influence of marijuana. So maybe by keeping them off the road, accident numbers decreased and we saved lives. On the other hand, crashes have increased each year over the past few years, so technically the roads are not safer. We've just reduced the potential risk of additional crashes by removing those drivers from being behind the wheel. We should also mention that there are a lot of cases where drivers are pinged and taken off the road for using CBD, which claim to have zero THC in it, and they were shocked to have a positive drug test result. Regardless of why they were removed, 70% of those drivers have yet to start the return to duty process, which is required to continue driving. So we may have lost that 70% for good. So what can be done then? Well, until marijuana legalization happens on a federal level, all we can do is educate, train, and stay up to speed on your state laws and update your company's drug policies. Education on marijuana and CBD are both essential so that they can hopefully avoid the positive drug test and the long drawn-out return-to-duty process that comes along with it. Training managers is also important and in some cases required. Managers must know what to look for in employees that may be using drugs, and they also need to know what to do if employees test positive and are using marijuana or CBD products. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to CBD, but for companies regulated by DOT, a drug and alcohol supervisor training is required to help deal with situations just like this. As an employee or a company, always review state laws. Just because marijuana is legal in your state doesn't mean an employer can't fire you for testing positive, even if an employee is legally allowed to use it for medicinal purposes. It all depends on their workplace policy. With that said, each state has different laws and even exceptions like New Jersey, Oklahoma, and New York City. So it's important to review and understand those laws if you are a person that might be an exception to the rule. As a company, you can update your policies. To deter CBD use, Many companies make it clear within their own policies that CBD use is forbidden and create a plan to get drivers back on the road safely through the return to duty and SAP process. If you or your company is unsure where to start, just fill out the form below or call us at 1-800-551-9816 and a CNS occupational healthcare specialist will help you out. Well, that's it for this month's newsletter. See you next month. Happy birthday, America. Texas Matt, out.